the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
I believe is how you pronounce that.
I believe you.
I heard Rusty Mansell say it that way. It's not how I would have pronounced it, but I was looking at it. So Zayden Walker, the composite, I think Scott was like the 10th overall player in the country. This is now the 11th five-star linebacker Georgia has signed since Kirby Smart got to Georgia. Like this is, and fun fact for you, this will be Kirby Smart's 10th recruiting class since he got to the University of Georgia, 2025. It does not seem like Kirby has been there for a decade, but he's now next to Mark Stoops. He's the second longest tenured coach in the SEC now.
Is that right?
Yeah, with Saban gone, it's Saban, Stoops, and Kirby. That's now just Stoops and Kirby. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's with Georgia. I'm sure most Georgia fans, I'm sure some Georgia fans feel this way. Like probably most fans of any college football team feel this way. The better the program gets, like the less you pay attention to recruiting as a common fan. It's like, recruiting is the lifeblood of the sport and you got to have elite recruits. You're always getting in the next crop. But it's like back in 2012, it was like, I don't know, we were looking for that dream team class, like that one, or that's 2011, that one player that can just set off the program. Like if we just get that Deshaun Watson, that could have been the guy that set us the program over the top. Now it's like, I don't have to pay attention to recruiting. Kirby's got the recruiting on lock. Like I don't have to keep an eye on him. He's got it going on. And it's like, you look at Georgia specifically, they signed just 5 stars on top of 5 stars. But how consistently are those players at the bottom of their class like some of the best players in the entire team? Like you look at a Ladd McConkey or a Javon Bullard or Stetson Bennett for that matter. Like it just seems like time and time again, Dylan Bell, like you look at just time and time again, the lower ranked players Georgia gets like tend to be some of the best players in the class. And so the 5-star, you get the 5 stars and develop everyone else. But yeah, Georgia recruiting, I think they're up to 5th. In the rankings currently, but this month of June and July, I think, is when things, around the country are really going to pick up in terms of commitments.
Yeah, I mean, they had some big OVs this past weekend. Tennessee is in a battle with them for Travis Smith at a Westlake 4-star receiver, long, rangy, who I know Tennessee would really like to get in the boat here as they are looking to get one more if they can in this group. But I mean, like you said, it's the linebackers. Like you look at just who they also are going to try and flip. The USD kids, Isaiah Gibson, and then Justice Terry. We'll see if they're able to keep both those guys in the South here in this cycle. Shady Hayward, who Tennessee's been on for a long time at safety. We'll see if Tennessee is able to close a deal there, because also another Georgia kid. But I mean, I think it's one of those where it's funny you say this about recruiting.
Is that
I feel like
Lagonzo?
Yes.
Is that his name? Lagonzo? Yeah. I'd never seen that name before.
Yeah. Well, he goes by Shady Hayward. Yeah, Shady Hayward.
Okay.
Yeah. But really good player. He might be a hybrid, more linebacker, depending on. We'll see what happens when he gets to college. But I think what's interesting, what you're saying, is like, I wonder if that's the case for the majority of. I kind of want to do like a poll. This is like a feature story of like Alabama in the over the years with Saban, where was there a point where you're like, well, I know we're going to get a 5-star receiver. I know we're going to have a 5-star defensive end. Like I know it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
I'm not really. Sorry, it's hard for me to get wrapped up in the recruiting intel and be like, we had so-and-so on their OV this weekend. It's like, no, if we push for this person, we're going to get this person. I think that's where Kirby's at with Georgia. It's like when you're Tennessee or you're one of these schools around the South or you're one of these SEC rivals, like you're just waiting for Kirby, especially when you're having to recruit in-state, because the state of Georgia is just so strong recruiting anyway, with just the amount of talent in the high school ranks in the state of Georgia. Like Kirby is looming, even if you feel good. I mean, Tennessee obviously went and got 5-star receiver Mike Matthews, who I think is gonna be a really good player for Tennessee out of Parkview in Georgia. But like, I think by and large, it's just Kirby's just built this machine, and you just another 5-star linebacker, another 5-star defensive lineman, another, like, it just. I do understand, I guess it's kind of apathy for Georgia fans, where it's like, yeah, we had to, like, when we were in the Mark Richt era, we're fighting for, like, we're getting excited because we're like, this will be the class that gets us over the hump. This will be the group that gets us our first title. But you won back-to-back titles. You built this machine. You're like, I think we're going to be all right. I think it really doesn't. I think Kirby's going to close and have another top 5 class, and we go into next year.
And there were some of those early classes too that Kirby had that like June, July, they were sitting in the 30s or something with like 5-6 commits, and people started to freak out on the message boards. And it was like, guys, Kirby's got this. We're gonna end up with a top 3 class. Like, I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be really good. But yeah, like I remember a buddy of mine, an Alabama fan, like years ago, like working at the golf course, like talking about like these like freshmen that Alabama had, but it was like, it wasn't like so much as recruiting. It was like as the season's starting, like, oh yeah, supposedly there's this guy and this guy. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I know who they are. I follow the recruiting. I see all the guys they sign. I'm well aware, but it's like, that's kind of where Georgia's at now. But yeah, to what you said though, about the USC commits, my brother sent me a screenshot earlier today, their top 3 commits in their class. And like, I knew this, but hadn't actually seen it. And it's going to make any Georgia fan sick. It's like, you look at Justice Terry from Manchester, Georgia, Julian Lewis, Carrollton, Georgia, Isaiah Gibson, Warner Robins, Georgia. Like, those are 3 top 20 players in the country right now, the 3 highest ranked commits on USC's list. So that's not what you want to see. And there's a history with Kirby Smart of these big time guys, and he's talked about it, like they're not committed. Like, they can say they're committed, but they're not signed. I recruit the guys I want, so he's not going to give up. And there seems to kind of be a history of these big time 5 stars in the state of Georgia committing somewhere else and then eventually committing to Georgia, like in the end. Like, Kirby, he's the closer, so he'll figure out how to do it. But like, you go back to like a Justin Fields or like Brenton Cox, were guys that were committed elsewhere, big time 5 stars that they ended up pulling. KJ Bolden in this last class. Who's the Michael Williams a couple years ago. So it's like, there seems to be a lot of history of like, Georgia, Kirby keeps coming after you. If he's one of the guys you want, it's hard to get out of the state. So Rusty Mansell, UGA insider, he was giving some very cryptic messages after this big weekend that Georgia had, that it was going to be a very good weekend in the long run. And I think people are speculating, Zayden Walker, we obviously saw him just commit, but a lot of it seemed to be around those USC guys that they were able to get on campus. And I think Georgia definitely is still trying to get Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson.
I'm going to go ahead and say that USC doesn't hold on to all 3. I think they probably hold on to maybe 2 of 3. I don't think they keep all 3, is my guess. I
don't know they hold on to Julian Lewis, because, I mean, he just seems to be all over the place with his recruitment. I don't think he's going to go to Georgia, but I think he's a guy that just feels unpredictable. But
Hey, Chris Collinsworth entered the chat. Here's a guy that... Do you know, like, Chris Collinsworth always does that on the broadcast on NFL, on Sunday Night Football? He's like, here's a guy, you're doing that's what he always does. That's his bit. He's like, here's a guy who came in here, you're doing that. Here's a guy with Julian Lewis.
Okay. I look at USC, what they are, what Lincoln Riley has been as a football coach, and what they're going to put on the field in this 2024 season. If you're a defensive lineman, man, it's got to be hard to get excited about that. You could be excited about like, oh, there's a spot for me to play right now. But man, when you watch that Georgia defense play, I imagine that's going to speak to what you want to do at the next level way more than that USC defense is going to.
Yeah. Well, Matt Green, that was good. Dog bites this week. I'm glad that, let me check my notes here. Georgia's getting more 5-star talent. Great. Love it. We also found out that the College Football Playoff officially unveiled their 2024-2025 expanded playoff that we will see this year, the 12 team.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.